against another group of neighbors who thought it would be poor for their quality of life and their surroundings. I don't even want to mention the details because I'm afraid some of the people involved might be concerned. But what I regret in retrospect is that I didn't do more to try to facilitate dialogue and discussion among the different parties in order to diffuse some of the tensions. And it's not as though that necessarily would have solved the problem or gotten everyone on the same page, but some of the anger might have been diffused, and it would have helped neighbors to work together more closely and more cooperatively than they did otherwise. And I did step into it because it wasn't formally my responsibility to do so. The issues involved were not before the City Council, which I served on at the time, but rather before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so I sort of took a strict and narrow reading of my responsibilities and said, this isn't for me to do. But I think the lesson I learned from that is that leadership requires more than that. If you're going to lead, and if you have the capacity to address the problem, it really imposes upon you a responsibility. And I've tried to remember that in all the time since, and that certainly would shape how I approach my duties as a county executive, an expansive view of what it's possible to do to improve people's lives and solve problems.
I think the biggest mistake I ever made was admitting I'm a Miami Dolphins fan here in Jets and Giants territory. I want to go back to one thing he said about the water, because I think this is really the difference between two of us in a nutshell. The standards set by the federal government on drinking water have changed, and every community around the country is meeting those and changing with that. And it's a complex problem because you're dealing with massive water treatment plants and all this other stuff. The first plan that was put to us was a $100 million plan. We have to pay for that. There's no magic fairy dust that pays for that. And I question why it would cost so much. Were there other options? And so we have found out that yes, there is one. $4.7 million could do the trick. So instead of taking the first deal like the housing deal was done by Mr. Spano, or apparently he would do with the $100 million option for water to bring us to standards, we took a $4.7 million standard, which will do what it's supposed to do and continue to provide safe drinking water. The drinking water has never changed. It is safe. Let's start with that. But there's a difference of the knee-jerk reaction to just spend like it has no consequences. Spending has enormous consequences. We've seen that in New Rochelle. Spending is up through the roof, and they've taxed through the roof. Now, I know we have a very difference of opinion on what taxation should be. We have kept the property tax levy down, and when the budget comes out in a couple of weeks, it'll be the 4th straight year without a tax increase, contrary to what's happened in New Rochelle.
Thank you.
If I may do a follow-up, Mr. Astorino, I appreciate the fact that you're a Dolphin fan, but from the standpoint of your